Hi, everyone. Welcome. I'm Kelsey Mora, the Chief Clinical Officer for Pickles Group. We'll just give everyone a few minutes to settle in. If you're in a position where you can safely use your chat, we'd love to hear where you're joining from. It's always really interesting to see all the different places in the country and world that folks are logging on from, and maybe what brings you here if you're interested in sharing that as well. But we're so excited to have this important and I know October is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but of course, everyone here is committed to building awareness about breast cancer all year long. And we know that your families are facing breast cancer all year long. And so we just wanted to make this part of Breast Cancer Awareness Month, but also just honor that this is a reality that many are facing every day. And we're here with you. I'm Kelsey Mora, the Chief Clinical Officer for Pickles Group. I'll be walking us through a brief presentation on how to talk to kids about breast cancer from my expertise as a dual certified child life specialist and therapist. But this webinar and panel is in collaboration with some of our amazing and trusted partners in this important work. And you'll get to hear from 5 panelists who have all had a lived experience with breast cancer in their family. So thank you to Rush Health, ABCD After Breast Cancer Diagnosis, Susan G. Komen, For the Rest of Us, Living Beyond Breast Cancer, and National Breast Cancer Foundation. And also a special thank you to Dr. Eleonora Teplinsky, who will be moderating our panel, and I'll be introducing her shortly as well. Welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to go ahead and get us started so that you can have lots of time to hear from the incredible parents and families that are here tonight. So before I start, it's always helpful, whether you're new to Pickles Group or you're well familiar with Pickles Group, just to ground everyone in why this topic is so important. Pickles Group is dedicated to supporting kids who have a parent or guardian with cancer. And we actually see between 40 and 50% of our families, it might even be closer to 60% at this point, of families in our program are navigating a breast cancer diagnosis. So it is really common amongst our population. We're serving hundreds of kids and across the country and the globe. And so we do that in 3 main ways. We're really committed to providing kids with honest and age-appropriate information, coping skills, and peer connection. So tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about 3 main tips to help apply those conversations at home or in clinics. But certainly the groups that we provide are all about bringing kids together to realize that they're not alone and that there's other kids that can relate to this lived and shared experience. What we're going to talk about. So I'm going to share a little bit more about developmental responses. Our youth groups, which we're most known for, are for 1st through 12th graders, but we recognize that families can span development from little ones to older ones. And so I'm going to cover developmental responses from infancy through adolescence. We'll also take a closer look at our free family cancer support kit. You will get a free digital copy of that tonight. It is available, and it's something that families and clinicians can request. We distribute those to tens of thousands of hospitals all over the world. And it has 3 main tips in it for how to have difficult conversations about cancer with kids. So I'm going to take a closer look at that and really apply those 3 tips to this topic of breast cancer. And then we'll pivot to our family panel and discussion, as well as end with hearing a little bit more about the partner orgs that are here tonight and the resources that are available to you near and beyond Pickles Group. And I see folks are entering in the chat where you're joining from, and I'm excited to see that. Seems like we've got, I see sunny Florida, which I was just very cold with my children outside before this in Illinois. So thank you for sharing that. I will be in Florida in November, so hoping that the sunshine is still around then. But I do love the changing colors of the trees here in the Midwest. Okay, so we'll start by talking a little bit about developmental responses. So as I shared, I'm going to talk about infancy through adolescence. And whether you are a parent on the call who has a child in infancy and toddlerhood, or maybe you have older kids, some people often think, why would I have to talk to a baby about cancer? They won't understand, they won't remember. And that's often a really common misconception, because even infants and toddlers are a lot more aware of what's happening around them. They might not understand exactly what's happening, but they definitely can sense changes in their environment. They're aware of the behaviors and the feelings of the people around them. And certainly with breast cancer diagnoses, infants and toddlers can have a lot of impact to their caregiving routines. So it can disrupt their primary caregiver, it can disrupt their feeding, their caregiving routine. And so they may wonder, what's going on? Is my parent mad at me? Why aren't they holding me? Why aren't they feeding me the same way? Why are suddenly all these people in my house? And so it's really important to even think about how to support the littlest ones with understanding in a really simple way and dispelling some of their misconceptions that, I did something wrong and mommy's not holding me because she's mad at me, or that this is, all about germs because they're learning a lot about germs. So really thinking about how to normalize the experience for even the littlest ones. Preschool is when folks start to think about, how do I talk to my preschooler about this? Because they know that they can verbalize, they have a lot more curiosity and questions, but they're often understanding it from what's ever familiar to them. So this is the age group where I'm often talking about explaining cancer as a problem with the cells, because when kids of this age just hear the word sick, they often think about germs, right? They might be thinking of a runny nose, a cough, something that maybe is going to get better quickly with, a little bit of care, and that's not how cancer works, right? It's sometimes the person they love looks or acts a lot more sick before they get better. Sometimes it takes a really long time. It's not contagious. And so really helping little ones understand that this is a different kind of sickness than what they're used to. They also experience a lot of magical thinking. So what that means is that they might have a story in their mind that is really different from the reality. This is that the unicorn, the fairy dust stage. And so it's really hard to talk about something like cancer with this age group, but so important to be really clear and honest, because they're often making stories in their mind that might cause more confusion or misunderstanding. And then we move on to elementary age. So these kids are out in the world, they're interacting with their peers, they're attending school. They might have more understanding, but they also might have misinformation. I was just with a young girl in this age group who shared that, well, if I don't understand something, I could just ask my older sister and she could ask her iPad. We talked about, well, let's talk about how to get information safely. Like, where can we get information? An iPad can definitely be helpful, but we have to be really careful about where we're looking and what we're reading and whether or not it's true for our family. And so guiding even parents on doing that searching and that researching with their child. Some kids are really curious and they want to learn, but that can be a great opportunity to connect, is to do it together, because this age group really wants to turn to their friends or the internet. And it may not be accurate. It may be scarier. It may be really off. And so helping them get their information from the most trusted source, which is often a parent or a caregiver. And then adolescents, of course, they're likely to understand a lot more. This is kind of another age group that I think we sometimes forget because we think they can understand more than they can. I've had teenagers who have a lot of questions about medical care, and there's a lot that they don't understand, or maybe they've had another cancer experience in their family or in their life. And so they're having a hard time distinguishing the different cancer experiences. Are you going to die because grandma died? Or maybe it is more of a poor prognosis and serious, and they think, oh, well, I know that someone else had cancer and they got better, and it wasn't that serious, right? And so helping them understand that there's a lot of different types of cancers, a lot of different treatments. There's been a lot of advances in treatment. And so helping teens really understand and unpack all the things that they're thinking about. They're also thinking a lot more big picture. So, oh, how's this going to affect me? I'm capable, I can be more helpful, but I also have my friends and my routine and my homework and my sports. And so they may struggle with roles and where do I kind of help, but also take care of what's important to me. And so all of those conversations can be complicated. And for teenagers, we want them to know that they can talk about those things with their family and with their parents. We have on our panel tonight parents who have navigated really different stages of development. We recognize that not every kid identifies in a certain way chronologically, or their development may need different things. Your kids best, and kind of how to navigate what they need, but these are just some typical experiences based on development and what kids know and understand at different ages. So here's our family cancer support kit, which I mentioned at the beginning. So this is available in English and Spanish, and it's something that can be requested online. We distribute these to thousands of hospitals all over the world. It is free, it doesn't take up a lot of space on a shelf, and it is extremely helpful. So this is often a very great first step for initiating conversations. But what I want to highlight is that the tips that are in this support kit are applicable to every conversation throughout cancer. So a lot of times people think, that this is going to be about that initial diagnosis conversation. You might be joining us at really different parts in your treatment or in your experience. And these tips can be for every conversation along the way. And in fact, the best way to approach these conversations is really to have them in bite size, right? Where we can't sit down and talk about everything all at once with kids. That's too much for adults too. And so being able to break those conversations up and applying this framework to them. So the 3 guiding tips for talking to kids and teens about cancer are sharing information, sharing expectations, and sharing feelings. And so I'm going to break each of these down in a little bit more detail. So sharing information. So a lot of parents may wonder, like, how do I even initiate a conversation, whether that's a first conversation or a 10th conversation? And truly, when kids start to trust that their parents are going to update them when they need to and that they can ask questions when they have them, the in between can feel sort of normal, right? We can have these kind of conversations around certain times, like maybe you're taking medicine, like, oh, remember, I have to take my medicine, or I have an appointment today. Do you have any questions about my appointment? And so they can be these little small conversations, but for some of the more serious or significant conversations, you might be thinking about, how do I prepare for having that conversation? And I think one of the most important things to think about is who can have that conversation with you. It can be really hard to have that conversation alone. So is there a co-parent? Is there a family member? Is there a friend? Is there another provider? Thinking about where and when. There's no perfect time, but certainly when kids are, well fed and well rested, they can usually handle more information. I know Dr. Teplinsky recently shared on her Instagram, even like having conversations in the car sometimes, because then there's not as much eye contact, because a lot of people are scared of like the sit down conversation. With younger kids, I really encourage starting with play, right? And so getting on the floor and talking about it in a playful way, and even doing it while they're doing something else. But starting the conversation with a warning can be helpful. And what I mean by that is saying, I have something important to talk to you about, or I have some, information it might be difficult to hear. And what that does is it helps their nervous system kind of pre-regulate. They tune in a little differently, that whatever's coming next is not necessarily like, what do you want for dinner, or something more casual. It's a little bit of a different conversation, and it helps them recognize that before they're surprised by the information. And so again, it's not a one and done conversation. And so you don't need to go into any of these conversations with a script. The goal is really just opening the lines of communication and helping kids know that it's an okay topic. When it comes to breast cancer, there are a lot of things to explain. So obviously, one of the first things to explain is the parts of the body, and really using words like breast, talking about a tumor or a mass, which is essentially a clump of cells that aren't supposed to be there. A biopsy, that's testing the cells to find out why they're there and if I need more medicine. A mastectomy is a surgery to remove the breast tissue. So using really simple, clear language to help kids understand, explaining, if even just thinking about a surgical mastectomy is talking about the hospitalization, the pre-surgery, kind of what to expect, but then there's all the conversations after in terms of caregiving, what they might see, what might be different for them, drains, follow-up surgeries, follow-up appointments, a parent who can't drive or can't lift them. And so explaining some of those smaller conversations within the bigger conversation of this surgery, it can help to start with just what they need to know. So I'm going to be in the hospital for a day. Your neighbor is going to get you ready for school, and really kind of starting with what they need to know. And then you can lead to what they want to know, so that their questions or their curiosity will kind of help you know, what else do I need to add to this conversation? But starting just with what they need to know, which is usually, what are they going to see? What are they going to observe? What are they going to experience? So you can explain that to them before they're confused and wondering, no one said anything, so I don't think I'm supposed to ask about this, but I see something and I wonder what it is. And sometimes they might be more scared by what they don't understand. Kids will usually self-dose how much they can handle at any given time. So what I mean by that is that they may just be like, okay, I'm going to go back and play, or I'm going to go hang out with my friends after a kind of intense conversation. And you might think that it went poorly, but usually that just is your kid showing you that they have enough information and they need time to process it. Or you might have a kid who has a bunch of questions afterwards. And so every kid's a little different, but usually none of those responses mean that it went poorly. Some kids will act like nothing happened. Some kids will be more emotional. Some kids will be really quiet. Some kids will be really curious. And that's just them, like I said, showing you what they need. Kids are really egocentric. So what that means is they kind of see the view of the world through their lens. So they might be thinking, oh, how's this going to affect me? Or what does this mean for me? Or, I was playing a game before this, like, I want to get back to my game. And that might be really surprising for adults to experience, but that's just how, kids experience the world. So you're seeing on the screen, I'm a child life specialist and a therapist. So a lot of what I do is use play to help kids understand topics. And so the picture you see here is actually me teaching about a mastectomy using play. And so I have a doll. I'm pretty like low sophistication. Some kids benefit from real medical equipment, but in this case, you're seeing pipe cleaners that are representing drains and little foam stickers representing tubes and catheters, and then drains, and just some gauze wrapped around the doll. So I've done this on paper. Paper and markers is just as effective. Even for a young child, it might be helpful to draw a body and put Band-Aids over the breasts and the chest area so that they understand what part of the body is hurt. And so explaining that that's the surgery and that I have a bump on my breast that's not supposed to be there. So they're doing a surgery to test it or to remove it, and showing them like this part of my body hurts. And that's why it makes it hard for me to move my arms right now. And so they can actually have a visual for where it hurts and why, in a really simple way. Okay, I'm going to move to sharing expectations. So again, I talked a little bit about these bite-sized conversations. And so really preparing kids for what's going to change for them, what will be different and what will be the same. Because even when navigating breast cancer, there are things that can be the same. You're still going to go to school, but the neighbor's going to take you. Or you're still going to go to your soccer game, but I won't be able to be there today. And so helping them understand what's going to be the same, but what's going to be different. A lot of times people will ask, like, what about the unexpected? Because we can't prepare kids for every scenario. Actually, kids do better with the unexpected when they have kind of a baseline foundational understanding of what's going on. So an example I often give is if a parent has a fever and has to go to the hospital, you might be explaining, like, remember how mom has the breast cancer? Well, when she gets a fever, we have to be extra careful. And so she's in the hospital just to make sure that her body's safe and healthy. And as soon as she's better, then she'll come back home, right? It's a little bit easier to have that conversation than to feel like you have to back up to the beginning and explain every detail. You can kind of build on what they already know. Many people feel loss of control when navigating cancer, and kids do too. We talk a lot at Pickles Group about this concept of grief and how there are non-death losses. And so the second there's a cancer diagnosis, there's a lot of loss. That's why Pickles was started, because our kids were saying, like, my friends don't get it. They were experiencing that loss of relatability and wanting to really connect with other kids who understood. And so there is a lot of loss. And one way that can help kids feel a sense of control is by providing choices. And those can be really simple choices. Sometimes they're about the cancer, like how involved a child wants to be. Do you want to come with me to my appointment? Do you want to visit? Do you want to make a card for mom's room? Do you want to help pack my bag? But sometimes it might just be choices about other things, like homework's not a choice. Do you want to do it right now or in 30 minutes? Maybe they need a little break to relax after school, or maybe they like to get it done right away. Or it's breakfast time. Do you want to use the blue bowl or the red bowl, right? It sounds really silly, but it does help kids feel a sense of control when everything else feels chaotic. And those are good parenting strategies, regardless of if there's cancer in the picture, but certainly cancer exacerbates this feeling of not having a sense of control. And when provided with it, it can sometimes help. I apologize if you can hear crying. I have 2 little ones and it's bedtime. Okay, and then keeping things consistent. So parents really benefit from continuing to find ways to parent through their kids' growth and development. I'm sure many parents can relate to feeling like, life just feels like it's all about cancer and I just want to have like normal moments with my kid. And so those don't have to be big to be impactful. It can be helping your child with their homework. It can be, having a ritual before bedtime, even if it's hard to be, in their bed reading books when you're recovering from a surgery or something like that. So building, it's not all no. It's like, okay, yes, but maybe it has to look a little different right now, but it doesn't mean it can't still happen, because kids really benefit from that structure and routine and even rules. It can be common when there's something really big and hard going on to kind of relax on the rules, and that can be more confusing to kids. And it can also be a lot harder to get back on schedule and track when things calm down with the cancer. So again, kids really need that like sense of purpose, and school and play is their job. And so them being able to have that feel as normal as possible can provide them with that sense of stability and predictability and purpose, but with extra support. So this is when it can be really helpful to notify the school what's happening. So that, kids spend a lot of time at school. It can be helpful for their school environment to know what's going on as well, so that they have support in all of their settings. And last but not least, this third tip is sharing feelings. So, it's really common for parents to feel like, I have to be strong for my kids. I can't let them see me cry. I'm here to tell everyone that it is okay to cry, and it is okay to show your kids emotions when you need to, because being strong can actually be showing kids how to handle challenges. Like, that is strong. it's not really normal to like not feel anything when you're navigating cancer. And so by showing kids that it's okay to feel sad sometimes, it's okay to feel confused, it's also okay to have fun and feel silly and experience joy. And so navigating breast cancer can be a really unique opportunity to model for children, how to feel their feelings, how to express themselves, how to deal with hard things. And that is a life skill. And that's why at Pickles Group, we are so focused on coping skills, because that is something that will really help kids in their future as well. So increasing communication, it can be something simple like saying, I feel sad because I'm tired today and I wish I could run and play with you. So it's just stating how you feel and why, and maybe sometimes it could be a solution, sometimes it could be a need. We talk a lot about how there's not really anything to like fix, right? It's not, we want to fix things as parents and we can't really fix it. This is so hard. And so kids really need support over solutions. And it might just be naming like, this is really hard today. Like we could maybe brainstorm some things we can do to feel better or some solutions to the challenge. But sometimes it might just be naming like that this is really hard, and it's not what we hoped for right now. And that's okay. Identifying and practice coping skills as a family, kids learn so much from just watching what's modeled in their environment. And so, as a parent, when you're embracing your own feelings and demonstrating that for kids, oh, I'm feeling kind of overwhelmed right now. Like, I'm going to take a deep breath, or I need some water, or I would love to read with you, but can we sit in this chair because it's more comfortable for me today? And really naming that for them, it's so healthy for kids to see their parent taking care of themselves and their kids. And again, those are life skills to learn how to take deep breaths early on, to recognize that that helps calm their body, to be able to adapt and adjust to changes along the way. All of these things are so helpful for kids. And so, again, the three pillars at Pickles Group are honest and age appropriate information, coping skills, and peer connection. And we really approach these topics with these three tips. So, sharing information, that's that honest and age appropriate piece. Sharing expectations, that's kind of how to navigate the change and the unpredictability and feel a sense of normalcy when things are really not normal and you didn't expect this. And then that third piece of sharing feelings, that's really about helping kids cope and have long-term adjustment. There's a lot of research that shows that when kids are provided with these three things, that they can thrive. We really see our programming as preventative. We want to help kids develop skills to help them cope with a really hard thing before it becomes a problem, before it becomes more challenging to manage. And so building those skills, and those can happen at home. Those can start at home. I know you're going to hear from one of our Pickles family who will share, some of the ways that they've adapted some of the activities we do at Pickles Group into their own dinner table or their own home. So I'm excited for you to hear that as well, because it can be so helpful. So at this point, I'm gonna pause on talking about how to talk to kids about breast cancer, and I'm gonna let you hear from the real experts, which are the parents who have lived this experience and done this with their own kids and their families. And we've got our five amazing parents. You can see here they're all going to introduce themselves and their connection to the organizations tonight. But before I do that, I also want to introduce our moderator. So we have Dr. Eleonora Teplinsky with us. She is a board-certified medical oncologist specializing in breast and gynecologic oncology. She is the head of breast and gynecologic medical oncology at Valley Health Systems in New Jersey and a clinical assistant professor of medicine at the Econ School of Medicine at Mount Sinai. Her clinical and research interests focus on young women with breast cancer, cancer survivorship, and the use of social media in oncology. Dr. Teplinsky serves on the medical advisory board of Living Beyond Breast Cancer, is a frequent media contributor and speaker, and is the host of the Interlude podcast, where she shares the stories and experiences of those who have been affected by cancer. She's working on her first book called Beyond the Pink, to be published by Balance, an imprint of Hatchet Book Group, in September of 2026. So we do have to wait 11 months, but it's going to be amazing. And I know that there is also some valuable information in there about parenting with cancer as well. So I'm going to stop my screen share here so you can see all of these wonderful parents and people, and I'll turn it over to you, Dr. Teplinsky.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here. And I am thrilled to have this conversation. So first, I think it'd be great if all of the panelists could just take a moment and introduce themselves. I think we're all going to be spotlighted here. But Julie, why don't we start with you?
Hi, so I'm Julie Turner. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I was diagnosed at the age of 36 with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. I'm married and I have 3 children. My oldest is 21. My middle is 16 and my youngest is 10. Yeah, I'm representing LBBC today. And this is really important for me to be here because I believe in honest conversations, even the hard ones with the kids, because it really helps them feel less scared and more supported.
Wonderful. Monique?
Hello, everyone. My name is Monique Morris. I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I live here with my husband and our 4-year-old son. I was diagnosed with stage 2 hormone positive, HER2 negative breast cancer in 2022 at 31 years old. Today, I'm representing ABCD as a mentor with ABCD. I'm often paired with other moms who are trying to navigate the cancer experience while parenting young children. So this topic is not only top of mind for me, but also very close to my heart. So I'm excited to be here and very grateful for this conversation.
Wonderful. Beth?
Hi, I'm Beth Alvarez. I live in the western suburbs of Chicago in Illinois. My husband was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer in March of 2020. He was 33 years old. I have 2 kids, they're 6 and 8 years old. And today I'm representing Pickles, as our family has been participating in their programs, and that's been really helpful, some of the strategies and take-homes that they've provided.
And I know we'll share some more about those throughout the evening. Paula?
Hi there, I'm Paula Schneider. I live in beautiful sunny San Diego. I was diagnosed in my 40s with triple negative breast cancer in 2007. And I have grown daughters now with kids, with babies of their own. And I am representing Susan G. Komen. I was the CEO until recently. I still am the vice chair at this moment. And I wrote a book about helping young women who have been diagnosed with breast cancer to be able to tell their children. It's a children's book called Love Stays Strong.
Wonderful. I think that's going to be an excellent resource for everyone. And Melanie?
Hi, thanks for the opportunity to be here. Good evening, everyone. My name is Melanie. I live in Frisco, Texas, and I was diagnosed in 2017 at age 38 with triple negative breast cancer. I have 2 kids who are now going to be 18 and 15, but at the time of my diagnosis, they were 9 and 6. My amazing 9-year-old daughter, Ava, has cerebral palsy, and her daily needs and developmental stage when I was diagnosed was similar to a preschooler at that time. And today I'm proudly representing National Breast Cancer Foundation. They gave me hope while I was fighting cancer, and now a job to help others who are fighting.
Fantastic. So I think we'll start off. We have a lot of questions here. I'm loving seeing some of the questions in the chat, and we'll try to address them as we go along. But I'll start here with Beth for the first question, and then feel free to chime in. What did you find were the benefits of talking to your children about cancer diagnosis and treatment?
Yeah, so my kids were very young when my husband was diagnosed. They were 9 months old and 2 years old. But even at that age, I think, like Kelsey spoke already, they picked up on any tension and changes happening. It was also March of 2020. Like, there was a lot to navigate going on in the world. And they had some big, like my 2-year-old ended up going to live with my parents for a month because my husband had like pretty intense care for those first months of his diagnosis. But it was nice to be able to pick up and talk about it in like an age appropriate manner. So we talked about how daddy was sick. Some of his bones needed help to become strong again. And as they've aged and gotten older, it's been helpful to talk more openly about my husband's cancer, to just like build that trust and maintain the trust in the family. We really like want to build that strong foundation so they know that they can come with us for any questions. They can share anything, whether that's like celebrations or concerns, whether it's cancer related or not. And I know like our family has some tough times ahead, and I just hope like as they get older, they can, this message of trust will just build so that we can continue to support them, to help like ground them and reduce anxiety, that they might have.
I think it's really important. I'd love to hear from some of the other panelists, maybe if your kids were a little bit older, how, you felt about the benefits of having these conversations.
Yes, I'll jump in. So a lot of kind of reiterating what Beth has already said or what Kelsey shared. I wish I had known Pickles Group back then and the resources and been able to have picked Kelsey's ear, because a lot of that information we couldn't find. So we kind of did our best, but it is, one thing that I had noticed was that I think with anything, kids notice when something is different or when something is wrong. And, even if you think you're doing your best to kind of hide it, they know. And if you aren't talking with them, I notice, especially with my kids, they tend to let their imaginations run wild and they don't know what's wrong. And so sometimes they wonder, was it something they did or, something really bad was going to be happening. One thing too that was really a great benefit with talking to the kids about having cancer was that it helped me realize how resilient they are. So being honest with them gave them a chance to kind of prepare for the changes that our whole family was going to be going through. And so I think that was really some of the big benefits of sharing.
Paul, I wasn't sure if you were going to add something there.
Yeah, it just depends on also sort of the age of the kids, like, because it's your own perception. You're already going through something that's incredibly traumatic for you and you're worried about your family, but kids react completely differently. And, mine were 11 and 13 at the time, and my 11-year-old wanted to see every stitch, wanted to go to the hospital, wanted to understand everything, every aspect of what was happening to mommy. And my 13-year-old felt like it was just so overwhelming that she stayed at her friends' houses. She didn't want to, I brought her, when my husband brought her to the hospital during one of my many stays there, she almost fainted. So I thought, okay, this is not good for her. And it's not personal to me. I mean, I know how much she loves me and I know how much I love her and vice versa. But you have to sort of understand who your kid is and be okay that they're going to handle it differently.
I love what you said about it's not personal, because their response is, how they're kind of thinking about it, and it might be at odds with how you think they're going to respond. So I think that message of it's not personal is really important. What about any difficulties or challenges when you were having those conversations, either at the onset or as time progressed?
I would say one of the challenging things is figuring out how to balance honesty that's appropriate for their age with protecting them from things that they might not be ready for. So my son was very young when I was diagnosed. It was just 6 weeks after his first birthday. So some of that evolution is still kind of taking place as he gets older. He's 4 years old now. So I think that that's one of the challenges that kind of evolves as he gets older, is figuring out that new balance of what information is appropriate for him to have. And just balancing that with him, maybe being fearful with not having enough information. I think one of the other challenging things to talk about are some of the unknowns. So recurrence, handling questions like, will you get sick again? Those types of things can be difficult to explain, especially at an age appropriate way for someone so young. So those are some of the challenges that we've seen. One thing that I think helps is just kind of gauging what his level of curiosity and understanding is, and kind of starting from where he is and going from there, as opposed to, giving him all of the information because he asked, just kind of taking a step back to really assess what he might be comfortable with learning and what's appropriate for his age level.
I think also you might be struggling yourself with some of the answers to those questions, right? In terms of there's so many unknowns in terms of risks and recurrence and what to expect. And so part of that makes it hard to answer those questions when you don't have the answer to them, and then to put them in an age appropriate way. I think these are really challenges.
Absolutely.
Julie, I know you were going to comment.
Yeah, so for me, the hardest part, one of them, a challenge would be seeing fear and sadness and not necessarily being able to fix it or give them a solid answer. So in my situation, I have stage 4 breast cancer. And as of right now, there's not a cure. So likely I will be in treatment for life. So explaining that to my vast, my 11-year age gap, it's different for each child. And my older two are level 1 autism spectrum. So the way they process the information is very different than my youngest. So it's definitely very challenging for me to kind of go into these conversations in ways that each child will, accept, and to help them feel better about it when I don't really have a good answer. Yeah.
I think that's really valuable, and echoing what has been said, that I don't know is okay to say. Sometimes we really don't know the answer to that. Now, thinking about kind of your experience and having gone through some of this and some of the conversations that you've had, I know a lot of you now work as mentors and help other women or men who are going through this. What would you say to someone who's newly diagnosed or just starting to have these conversations and starting to think about talking about cancer with their children?
I would say it's important to check in with yourself first, engage whether or not you're emotionally ready for that conversation, because I think that can play a large role in how that conversation goes. So that would be the first thing. And then 2 would be, don't overcomplicate it. I know for me, I put a lot of pressure on myself at the beginning, just thinking about all of these conversations that would happen in the future and, well, how do I approach that? What do I say? I've found that over time, just kind of letting that evolve naturally has been really helpful. Not thinking that you have to explain everything all at once, just kind of taking it step by step and following your child's lead in terms of what they're interested in knowing more about is something that's been helpful there too.
That's why I wrote my book, because I literally spoke with 4 different women that were in their early 30s that had small children that had been recently diagnosed with breast cancer. And it was a common theme, which was, how am I going to tell my kids? And, especially when mommy starts to look different, and if you lose your hair or you just can't get up out of bed or any of those things. But I do think it is, it's a way to start a conversation that should continue on and will continue on during your whole treatment. I remember when I was diagnosed and when I first told my kids, I immediately planned that we would go to this festival that we went to every year right after telling them. Because even though that was the last thing I wanted to do, but I wanted them to feel like, okay, this is happening, but now life is as normal as we're going to try and make it. And there's going to be joy and there's going to be fun. And you're going to continue on doing the things that we would normally do as a family as best we can.
Yeah.
It's kind of along the lines of what Monique was saying, where it's like, check in with yourself first. I think what was helpful for me is writing. When you start to number your days, you think of all the things you want your kids to know if you're not going to be around. And so kind of my way of checking in was writing letters to the kids in case, I could go out tomorrow and get hit by a bus, so no guarantees. And so I think my way of checking in and kind of calming my own nerves on what was important to share with them, I was able to kind of help myself by writing letters that I knew if anything did happen, that they would have that. And then just knowing your kids and how much to share and when. Like in my household, we speak fluent sarcasm. And so if I had been just full on serious with both of them, and not thrown in a joke here or there, or to try and keep it as lighthearted as I could, that probably would have scared them more. So yeah, just, you know, your children, and, you know, when you take that time to check in with yourself, you kind of realize, the words come easier than you might expect when it feels so overwhelming and you're still having to face the diagnosis yourself. And you're a deer in headlights and the world's been flipped upside down, and you still have to go through the daily motions of getting the kids to school and packing lunches, and they've got a dentist appointment, but you are struggling yourself to, you know, to wrap your brain around a breast cancer diagnosis.
Yeah, I love that kind of checking in with yourself, but also your family dynamic and recognizing what your family dynamic is and honoring that dynamic so kids kind of feel comfortable, you know, trying to keep up with some of that normalcy is important. How did your children react? We've kind of touched on it a little bit, but you know, we've talked about how you prepared and how those conversations went, but what were their reactions? And have they changed as time has gone on?
So my daughter, who is now 16, was 14 when I was diagnosed, and her biggest concern was, is it genetic? And that was not something that I thought about in that moment, but that was the first thing on her mind. And, you know, luckily I had the genetic testing and I was able to ease her mind, because in my situation, it's not. But then it kind of opened up, it kind of brought her down to where we could have a conversation, to where, you know, a teenager, they think about themselves through their own lens. So she was like, okay, whew, I'm okay. So let's talk about you, Mom. So that was definitely a big thing with her.
Sometimes the questions that they ask, and we'll touch on this in a little bit, you know, can be surprising, right? In the moment, or things you weren't necessarily expecting.
Yes.
When I had first shared with my kids, I was a bit surprised because I had put a lot of time and effort into trying to think of what words to say. And I was, you know, hoping to check it off the list, like, oh, talk to the kids about cancer, check. Let me get it all in now up front. And then I can be done. But it is an evolving process. But when I first shared with them, you know, so do you have any questions? How do you feel? And they were like, okay. I thought, well, what is that it? So, you know, I guess giving them time to process really turned out to be how things evolved. So in the beginning, I guess some good advice is to keep it simple. Like a joke, like I should have just given them the version, like if I'd share it with my husband, like keep it simple. Like you're just kind of planting the seed, and it's going to grow along the journey. The different questions will come up as your kids' worlds change, when you lose your hair, when you have T-Rex arms after surgery, you know, when they see those changes. Sometimes for my kids, that was when we luckily had the foundation for open communication to ask questions.
I will say, I think sometimes, you know, when I see patients, you know, who have been newly diagnosed, they say to me, I don't even know yet what questions I should be asking. And so children are similarly, right? They don't know. This is the first time that most of them have gone through something like this, or maybe it was a grandparent or distant relative that they weren't so intimately involved in. Everyone's different, of course, but I think they don't necessarily know right away what questions to ask.
Yeah, and like I mentioned, my son was so young when I was diagnosed that he didn't have a reaction necessarily. He didn't understand exactly what was going on. Obviously, there were signals that something's different. Mommy's not the same, but he was much too young to understand any concept of cancer at the time. So I think that we are kind of discovering what his reaction to the whole situation is as he gets older and matures and develops a, greater level of understanding. So as we look at pictures from when he was younger, he might ask questions about, why do you have that bandage on? Or, I remember one of the first conversations we really had about I was sick with cancer is when he saw a picture of me with no hair when he was, very small. There's me and there's mommy, and mommy, where's your hair? And so that was kind of his first, real, at least communicated level of awareness of the situation. And so I explained that I was sick and I had something called cancer, and just kind of let that conversation again continue to evolve as his level of understanding grew.
So kind of pivoting a little bit or adding to that, what questions have your children asked as time has gone on? Maybe things that, like the genetics question that you weren't expecting, or things that felt a little surprising, or the average questions, of course, too.
Well, I think the first question both my girls asked me is, are you going to die?
Yeah.
Because it's a possibility. And I think regardless of age, I mean, there's, you never know the answer to that question, but I don't think it's necessarily something that you have to bring up that, hey, there's a good possibility or whatever it may be, until you really know everything that you have tried doesn't work. I'm not metastatic, which is lucky, but there's, I have friends and a whole metastatic committee at Komen that have been around for decades with Mets. So, there's so many new treatments that I think, to sort of just say that, look, we're all going to do our very best, and I think I'm going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
That was the big one. Yeah, and that's hard to answer because you don't know, but also that's your big fear too. Trying to answer that with honesty. I was always worried that if I just in the moment to not have to look at their faces and say, yes, that's possible. For that moment of kind of making it easy on myself, I always worried that if I didn't survive cancer, would my children then, if I had told them I was going to be fine and I wasn't going to die, and then I did, would that ruin their ability to trust? I don't know how y'all are, but if my husband gets the sniffles, like it looks really bad. And so like, if he were around and parenting them and he got the sniffles and they were like, oh my gosh, daddy, are you going to die? And he said, no, of course not. No, it's just the sniffles. Would they have such high anxiety for the rest of their lives, not being able to trust that what somebody tells them is actually the truth. And so I think, one of the things that helped me answer that question and actually helped convince me to try and pay attention to reality, because that was my worry too. But when I wanted to answer them honestly, it helped me kind of feel a little more at ease. I had to look at the facts. It's like, okay, kids, no, millions of women and moms have survived breast cancer. I'm not playing. I've got great doctors and a wonderful medical team. I'm listening to what they're telling me to do, and I'm doing everything, even if it hurts or it makes me tired. I'm doing what they are asking me to. So everything I can control, exercise, nutrition, everything I can control, I'm doing. So I'm not planning on dying. It's possible, but most people don't. And I plan on, being around for a very long time. So, being honest, but also positive when you can, that was really helpful. Some of the other questions I got is, do you feel sick? Are you going to lose your hair? Can I hug you? Is that going to hurt you? Can I catch it? I think some of the things, they were in elementary school at the time, so I think some of those questions came as maybe some of their friends heard the word cancer, and it's like, oh no, yeah, you can't hug her. It's like, okay, just maybe right after surgery, give me a side hug, but kind of being ready for those questions that pop up. Yeah, those are some of the common ones.
Beth, maybe would you be willing to share kind of your perspective from a caregiver side and how you navigated some of those questions.
Sure, it's sort of evolved over time, I think, because they went through like the infant, toddler, preschool, now elementary school age stage, but um, you know, a lot of it and at the beginning, like I talked about, daddy is sick, the doctors are helping him feel better. He went through some palliative radiation at the time, so my husband is he works at a particle accelerator place and he's big into science, so like he would talk about the tattoos and how it was, like his helping his bones and um yeah, and they had that sense. They didn't really have a lot of questions, just like, what's this boo-boo? Or, why do you need this lotion? Or, and so we would just sort of talk about it as the questions came up and the symptoms sort of came up. Um, and then over the next 3 months, his symptoms really improved. And the next few years, it was like a minimally invasive medication. The cancer was pretty stable. And at that time, we focused a lot on like coping skills, which is great for toddlers and preschoolers, anyways, and really trying to build resilience. And when our daughter was about the right before kindergarten, we were like, she's going to be going to school. People might have questions, or, maybe they hear about cancer from another classmate. And how do we start sharing information in a way that's like appropriate, what we want to share with them so that when questions do come from the outside, they have some knowledge about it. And so this is when I was actually connected to an organization called Bright Spot Network, and they support parents and caregivers who have cancer and have younger children, like under 6. And I remember meeting with the director and talking, sharing with the situation. My husband has stage 4 cancer and it will be a chronic condition, but at this point it's like minimally impacting our family's lifestyle. Like, how should we talk about this? Should we speak directly about cancer or wait? And her response, I think, has been one of the most impactful moving forward. And that was about that trust. Like, if you wait a year and start talking about cancer, or you wait 2 years and start talking about cancer, and then they have those questions like, well, daddy had cancer before, like, how come you didn't talk to us about it or tell us about it? Like, so it might break their trust. So like from then on, um, it was that sort of guided like how we talk to them. We've used a lot of books to start and ground the conversations. And like I think Melanie talked about like some periods of time we don't talk about too much because it's not impacting our day-to-day life. And there's sometimes there are more appointments or, more radiations needed. And that has more effect on the kids. And so that's when we maybe get more questions and have those conversations again. And at this point, like Matt has been through about 8 different treatments. And they are impacting our daily life more. So we do have like more questions. And he recently had a chemo port placed not too long ago. And it sort of showed like what someone was talking about, like how one kid really wanted to learn more about it and the other was like okay, because my husband showed the girls like an animation video of how the port was put in, and my 6-year-old was like, oh my gosh, this is like had lots of questions. Whereas the 8-year-old, who is also neurodivergent, was a little less like interested, but I know she's processing. One thing we haven't shared that my husband is stage 4 and that it's terminal. They have asked questions like, when will the cancer go away? And to that, we answer that he'll likely have cancer the rest of his life, but there's lots of medications and the doctors can use to help fight it. Just for our family and the how our kids process things, we just feel like it's not a worry that they need to carry right now. But yeah, that's sort of how we've addressed some of that through the age spans and time.
Thank you for sharing that. I think these are hard questions, and I appreciate you being so vulnerable with us and open and honest. Does anyone else have any kind of want to add here about questions that they've received from their kids, or even if maybe sometimes children are not open to talking about it, right, and don't want to talk about it? And have you had those moments where you've wanted to talk and they've not been as receptive? I know my patients share that with me sometimes.
Yeah, you have to do it at their pace. You really do. And even though you feel like you need to implant this information on them and help them along, they will sort of let you know what's reasonable for them. And I remember once I was doing homework with my littlest daughter, and I was so sick, and I snapped at her, and she wanted to yell at me so badly. And then she asked me, "What's the matter? Did somebody spit in your chemo?" And it made me laugh so hard. And that's sort of, when you say, Melanie, that you have to use humor, and you have to be able to have good laughs and continue on with your life, because life does continue on for them. And we had such a good giggle over that. And it just, it became a joke, an ongoing joke about somebody spitting in my chemo. And I was like, yes, I'm pretty sure somebody spit in my chemo. That's what's happening here today. And so you just have to try and find the joy in the little things as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because it can't be, it can't be as sad as you feel, because you've got to not obviously be fake about it, but try to find ways to be happy with your family and enjoy what time you've got going with them.
So I think we're kind of coming to the end, and this has been really, really tremendous. Before we end, I would love to hear from all of you about something that you want to add that maybe we haven't touched on, or anything that you want to share. And I love the findings of moments of joy. And if you have any that you want to share, I think that would be really empowering.
I have one. So when I was bald, first going through chemo, did not feel good, but I was like, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to make pancakes. It was a school morning. So I get up in the morning and I turn on music full blast, cooking up some pancakes, just like, we're just going to have the best morning. And my 8-year-old at the time comes in, and she's just staring at me, like mouth wide open, just like, what? And I was like, what? And she goes, I just don't know how you do it. And I was like, do what? Dance, sing, make pancakes? And she was like, no, you're going through chemo, you're doing radiation, the surgery, all of this stuff. And you can still sing and dance, and you take care of us every single day. And I just went to her and gave her the biggest hug, because that was what she saw, and it was really neat to see when I felt so bad, like through my daughter's eyes, that she could see, how hard I was trying. So it was really cool. So yeah, even if you're having a bad day, you can just kind of push on through, and yeah, your kids will surprise you sometimes.
They really do.
Yeah, I would say, just kind of building off of that, kids surprising us and also finding moments of joy. Shortly after I started chemo, I needed to shave my head after my hair started falling out. And I remember being just so terrified to go pick up my son, that he was going to react, with fear, or, that he would cry because I didn't look like myself anymore. And I remember getting there to pick him up, and he greeted me with the biggest hug, and he grabbed my face and he touched my head and he gave me kisses. And it was so surprising to me because I had built up this idea in my head so much on the way there that he was going to be afraid and that this was going to be a negative experience for him. And it just wasn't. And that really, I think, helped me to approach the change in a more positive way. We then took silly selfies with my new bald head, and I've got all of those pictures to look back at of us genuinely smiling and, enjoying our lives together in the midst of something that was really difficult for us. So kids are really resilient. They can surprise us, and I think they can also teach us a lot about how to find joy in the midst of something that's really difficult to deal with.
Absolutely.
Something that sort of brings us joy and grounds us daily is so part of the pickles group is the kids share is in their virtual groups as like a sweet and a sour and a superpower. So the kids share like something good that happened, something that was tricky, something that they learned. So we've sort of adapted it, and it's a dinner table activity where we all go around and share like our sweet and sours for the day. And that's always sort of a highlight and a grounding time for us as a family.
That's great. Paula or Melanie, anything you want to add or anything we didn't touch on?
I think from the support, let your friends help you.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's hard to do, especially if you're large and in charge. And if you can create that opportunity for people to step in and help you, you let them, and your kids benefit from that as well.
Kind of tagging off of what Paula just said, even letting your kids help. I think, kind of like Paula said, I think, I don't know if I'm large and in charge, but maybe in my own household.
I'm sure you are.
And so I think, it's hard when you're more of a giver to have people, to receive something. And so I think, but giving your kids a way to help out, even if it's like, I know my daughter used to bring me a bunch of tissues when I was laid up after surgery, and my son would come and cover me up, and I was in chemo pause. So, hot flash and all, and he'd throw a blanket on me, and I'm like, I will combust before I take this blanket off right now. But yeah, just giving the kids a way to help to where they feel like they're getting to take care of you a little bit.
And one of the things that I did was, and it was before I was at Komen, so it was the Avon walk was going on. And I decided I was going to do it. And then my kids decided they were going to do it, even though they were actually too young. I had to sort of lie to get them in. But then they raised money, and they ended up starting a high school at their high school. They ended up starting the Pink Club. And over a 5-year period, we raised almost $500,000. And to them, that was incredibly impactful, and it also helped them to talk about, what was happening in their lives at home, and to all of the parents, and find out other kids that were in the same situation, or certainly knew of other adults that had breast cancer, and it made them feel really, really good about participating and helping. And clearly that was a huge number, and it was a ton of work, but we probably had teams with like 30 of their friends that went every year. And and they all raised money, and we helped them, and it became like a big movement that I didn't plan when I first started, but it gave them a huge opportunity to help.
That's beautiful. I'm going to turn it over to Kelsey, just because we are kind of coming close to the end, and I know she's going to address some of the questions that are in the chat.
Thanks, everyone. Yeah, I saw a couple questions in the chat, and I just wanted to address some of the earlier topics as well before we close. I know that there were some questions about end of life discussions and death and dying. We do actually next month have a webinar and panel called How to Talk to My Kids About Incurable and end stage cancer. And so I'll be doing a similar 20-minute conversation more specifically about those difficult questions, and then we'll have a panel as well. So just wanted to mention that. And we talk a lot about, again, it's like that need to know. What do kids need to know right now? What do they want to know? And I think a lot of you spoke to navigating that within your own experiences, and even the differences of like the worry of making a promise that I can't keep, and how to navigate that. And so a lot of times I'm helping parents think about telling kids, like, that's not the doctor's worry right now, right? If something changes, I'll talk to you about it then. And I think for some of these metastatic diagnoses, talking a lot about, the living with cancer and the ongoing treatment and those conversations. And those are those change conversations of when treatment changes or when there's an update. So, I mean, you all beautifully shared your lived experience, but certainly that's some of the guidance that we're always navigating with parents and kids. I really appreciate the question about a teen who's isolating and doesn't want to talk about the cancer. And I think a common theme that you heard here tonight that I'll just echo and lift up is that trust building. And so for teens, that really looks like that consistency. Like, that's okay. We don't have to talk about it. I just want you to know that we can if and when you want to. And just being that consistent presence, and then really focusing on connection, like whatever they're into, and really just kind of like hanging out when they're open to it, and really being curious about what's important to them. I think that is such a great way to build trust with older kids, is to show interest in their stuff, oh, tell me about these Legos, like, what are you building right now? And, it's really cool. Or, whatever the topic might be. We actually are partnering with Epic Experiences right now on a podcast series, and we just shared, it literally dropped yesterday, so it's hot off the presses, but I got to interview 4 of our, actually 4 or 5 of our teen peer leaders. And so it's a 30 or 35-minute conversation, but you can hear directly from them. And it honestly might even be something that you would watch like with your teen, to hear from these other teens, because they are super inspiring. So we could maybe even try to add that to the follow-up email, because I think it could be really helpful. But Cam's dropping some links in the chat. And we do have a book list. I know a lot of the organizations on the call have, like, Living Beyond Breast Cancer has a Reading for Reassurance program, so families can actually get access to free books. I know that National Breast Cancer Foundation has a When a Parent Has Cancer landing page, and I know Susan G. Komen also has a booklet on when a parent has cancer. So there's a lot of resources just within this powerhouse of organizations right here, and we'll try to reference many of those in the follow-up email. But we hope that you'll do some exploring on your own, because there's a lot of good things to find now that unfortunately weren't as accessible even just a handful of years ago. So we're excited and unfortunate that we have to kind of lead the charge on making sure that the kids of parents with cancer have what they need. We also have a YouTube channel with a lot of our videos. And then the last thing I wanted to add, and I'm going to also share my screen, is in our youth programming, we have something called Phone a Pickles Friend, and kids in the program can actually ask questions that they have about their parents' cancer, and then we provide honest and age-appropriate responses to the group, and those get shared with the parents. And so many of the questions that you all share that your kids have had, kids in our group have had them as well. Sometimes kids don't feel comfortable asking their parent, and they'll ask the question during our groups. But then the nice thing is that we share it with the parents as well. So then it kind of encourages that ongoing conversation at home. And we have a huge log of all of these questions, and we're trying to even do like videos and content to help parents on, how do I answer my kid's question when they have it? Because there's so many. There's those common ones like, can I catch it? Can I cure it? Who will take care of me if something happens to you? But there's a lot of other ones in between. I know, I think it was Julie who mentioned, like, is it genetic? That's a common question we're seeing as well with kids. So lots more to come. If you are a family who has children between 1st and 12th grade, I wanted to just share our next enrollment deadline is December 20th. And so we have 2 main programs. We have Connect Over Cancer, which is our 5-week social emotional program for kids who have a parent living with cancer. I designed the curriculum, but it's facilitated by trained volunteers, many who are graduate students studying social work, child life, or nursing. And then we also have a Pickles Jars program for kids who have a parent with cancer, as well as kids who have lost a parent to cancer. And that meets on a monthly basis, and we open the jars a couple times throughout the year. So they'll be open again in January, but the registration is still the same. And then we also offer a few opportunities throughout the year to gather families in person. So if you live in the Chicagoland area, we have an event this weekend, and Cam can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can still register up until the end of this week. We'd love to see you. It's a really special opportunity. We just have to have families enroll first. So just wanted to share a few of those updates. We have in this PowerPoint, and you'll get a PDF of the whole slide deck. We have the information from each of the respective organizations. So you can see National Breast Cancer Foundation, Rush Health, who locally has a program for when to helping families when there's kids involved who have a parent with cancer. Living Beyond Breast Cancer, we talked a lot about the Reading for Reassurance free book program. ABCD for Scan for Support, make it really easy for you to get mentorship. And what's really cool about them is the one-to-one emotional support. It's specifically for people navigating breast cancer. And Susan G. Komen here to access all of the great resources that are available through them as well. And then For the Breast of Us is also part of this partner webinar. So if there's anything else for each of the orgs to add, we'll make sure that you all get it in the follow-up email. And just wanted to thank you all for committing to time to listen and learn and hold difficult things, but also mixed in with lightness and the laughter and the humor and the joy that kids so naturally bring us all, even during the hardest of times. So if you're interested in getting more involved with Pickles Group, you have information on the screen, but with any of the respective orgs, again, you'll receive a follow-up email with all of the links and resources so that you can continue to access the things you need to support your kids and families. Thank you. Thank you to our partners. Thank you to Dr. Teplinsky for moderating this important and meaningful discussion, and for all of the care that you provide your patients day in and day out who are asking these hard questions to you. We really appreciate providers who are raising their hand to really lean into these difficult conversations amidst all of the other medical care that you're providing. So thank you. And thank you to Rush, Living Beyond Breast Cancer, ABCD, Susan G. Komen, For the Breast of Us, and National Breast Cancer Foundation. We are tremendously grateful to be partnering with you on this talk and beyond to collectively better support families who have kids. Thank you.